to me. So, all right. So for those of you who came on after I introduced myself, I'm Andrea McJimsey. I'm the executive director of the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions. I live in Ashburn, Virginia, and I go to Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Herndon, which is in Fairfax County. And my representative is Jennifer Wexton, who I know personally. We used to be elected officials together. So, and I'm doing this because of my nephews and godchildren, and I love nature. So I'm really, really grateful that you all are here today. My goal for this training is to, first of all, answer any questions you have. So there are no dumb questions, because if you have the question, I bet you 5 of you have the question. So I really want you to encourage you to not be embarrassed by not knowing something and just ask. If it gets too much, I might say, let's follow up after the class. But there are just no stupid questions. And I also want to say, some of you are digital natives, like James obviously grew up with the internet. Some of us, there weren't computers until we got into college, or maybe they weren't even there in college. So we're at completely different phases of kind of development in this work. And I really want to engage everybody in this work. So, okay. Nancy is definitely having problems with her audio, so she's just going to listen. But Nancy, definitely chat at us if you have any questions, okay? All right. So we're going to start. I sent you an agenda by email. If you didn't have a chance to open that yet, I encourage you to open it, because I tried to kind of write out what I'm going to talk through so you can take notes. And I think I'm going to go in order, but I have a notes document that's separate. So first of all, we're going to talk about writing opinion pieces, which is one of the most powerful ways you can amplify your voice, for obvious reasons, the power of the pen and the press. Then we're going to talk about what I call climate Twitter. Twitter is a brilliant platform for climate people, and I'll explain that. Then we're going to talk through some other social media platforms. And then we're going to do a couple exercises throughout, but at the end for the last half hour, so I really hope you'll stick with me. I want to do an exercise around thanking Congress, because they happily, timing-wise, did a huge thing last week, which makes it perfect for the exercise for this class. Yay! And then, of course, some of you have representatives who weren't so great, but you can always thank other representatives. I tweet at Joe Manchin all the time, and he is not my representative. Okay, so why is writing an opinion piece interesting? Like, why does the press even want you to do it? Well, it's great content for them. And the stronger your opinion is, kind of the more authentic you are, who you are, your story, your opinion about whatever's going on, they're going to love it. And I asked everybody to buy some papers and read through them. And I think you'll see this theme. The people who get published are the ones who really have something to say. It's not journalism, right? It's not about reporting the facts necessarily, though you might incorporate some facts. It's about your opinion and your take on the world. And it's kind of representing the community. So if you don't remember anything else, having a strong opinion is basically the key to getting published. So I've been, by the way, writing letters to the editor for ages, for decades now. And I found out my grandpa used to do this all the time. So apparently it's genetic for me. I'm following in my granddaddy's steps. Okay, so the other thing, I sent you the podcast with Katharine Hayhoe, who's just so wonderful. If you didn't get a chance to read it, watch it, listen to it, it's, first of all, it's got really cool stuff from the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions. But she's such an amazing communicator, and she really talks about values and why your voice is so important. So I really hope you'll watch it. Did anybody who did get a chance to watch it have anything you want to share about, like, what kind of you came away with it, with yourself from having listened to it?
May I?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I like about her, and it comes very clear on this, it is that she has the facts, but she is very, like, she's speaking like, I'm her friend. Yes, I connect with her incredibly amazingly. So the ability to transfer her message, it is incredibly effective because she is really demonstrating to me why what she is saying makes sense. And I think that is an amazing ability because not everybody can do that. She's conveying a message, she's raising awareness, she's bringing people along, and she's being, nice and normal, so to speak. Yes.
Yeah. You know what, I worked at Environment America, and our media guys would always say, pretend you're having a beer with a reporter at a bar and just explain it to them. And that's, I mean, obviously an opinion piece isn't having a conversation with the reporter, but the same thing, basically, like, what would you say to your friend to explain what you're trying to say? Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So I also want to just say, a lot of people feel like they have to write quite a lot and kind of be an expert, and that's just not the case. I've actually seen letters to the editor that were one sentence. And I've noticed the ones that I get published tend to be on the shorter side. So don't think that you have to write a whole lot. It can be just a few sentences and still be very powerful. In fact, in some ways more powerful. I asked you to go and pick up hard copies of papers because that really matters. I know we've really moved into the digital world, but I want to give you examples. I went through some letters that I've gotten published in the Washington Post, and I figured something out, which was kind of interesting and cool. So first of all, I wrote back in 2021 a letter. I don't know if you can see this, but it's Save River Farm. I read an article about this farm that a nonprofit was going to sell to a developer, and it was like a conservation nonprofit. And I was so incensed that they would even think of selling this historic farm that's on the Potomac, banks of the Potomac. I just fired off one of my letters, and it ended up getting the top billing, like the very top letter. And the editor called me afterwards, and she said, "We need more female voices from Virginia. Would you write for us more often?" I said, "Sure." So I have a standing invitation because I was fired up about something I really didn't know anything about, read the article, and told them my opinion. Then I went through, the next one I got was about Jamestown. This is in my expertise is historic preservation and what flooding is doing. That's part of what I've been working on. I got the top letter again. And then the last letter I wrote, first of all, I just want to say it was after Congress totally screwed up and it looked like they weren't going to do anything. And so the front page was Biden needs to declare a climate emergency. So this was the Post. It's like all about climate change. Then if you go to the editorials, sorry, I got the top letter again. And I started out by saying the lack of congressional action is inexplicable and infuriating. So basically, I was echoing from a person point of view what they were saying all over the front page. And then when I looked at, by the way, the River Farm, the very first one, their editorial was Congress must go big on climate action. So me and the Washington Post were like really vibing. And I didn't even realize that until I went and looked at all those hard copies. So anyway, you can't tell where you're being placed by just looking online. So if you get published, go out and get the paper, and go out early in the day because there's not that many papers out there anymore and you want to get a copy. And why is that important? Because you know who is looking at the hard copy of the paper? Elected officials. Their staff gets all the papers. So they'll know if you got the top letter in the Washington Post, and that makes a difference. So I just wanted to say that's rule one. Once you get published, go get the hard copy too. All right. So
Andrea, let me ask you on this world of digital, why you have to have the hard copy when you can go to the application of the Washington Post or New York Times and get the information. You know, you make emphasis on getting the hard copy.
Yeah, why did I
yes,
say that?
why
Okay.
is that interesting? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I was not clear. So thank you for asking that, Joe. So if I'm Mark Warner and I'm his staffer who's in charge of press, I know that I'm getting the hard copy, or we should all know he or she is getting the hard copy of the Post. And if it's the top letter right next to the main editorial from the Washington Post, that's really different from like maybe being at the bottom. It's basically understanding if you ended up getting the top billing and how much kind of eyeballs are going to be on it, influential eyeballs in particular nowadays. Does that make sense?
I think that it makes sense, but you know, for me, it is. I wonder whether the staffers don't use.
They use the hard copy, trust me.
They. Oh no, that's what I wanted to know. It is that for
They
them,
do
the hard copy. It is okay, cool, okay, great,
the
great.
digital
Thank you.
too. The other thing I will say, sometimes, especially with a big paper like the Washington Post, you don't always get in the hard copy paper. Sometimes you just get digital. So it's just good to know that. It's just good to know. Because what we're working on grassroots organizing and influencing elected officials around climate. Like that's kind of our end goal, is to get them to do, well, to get, honestly, we want all kinds of people. We want faith communities to do the right thing. We want elected officials to do the right thing, et cetera. But letters to the editor, just the hard copy matters. That's basically just my point. Okay, so I asked you to go and get those papers, but you also should know where your outlets are digitally. So to that end, I wanted to crowdsource a project. I just put in chat a Google Doc that you should be able to open. And by the way, Google Docs is a social medium. So if you've never used it before, just click on that document. It should come up in a browser. I did make it the link so everybody should be able to open it. And that's basically a media list we have, which may or may not be accurate. I don't know. Media is going through such hard times. It's hard to know if the outlet even exists anymore. Megan, you will recognize this. And I would like to crowdsource putting in information about opinion pieces. And now I'm going to share my screen now and show you how to do that. If I can figure out how to share my screen. There it is.
I'm having a hard time accessing this doc from the link.
That's weird. I wonder why. Was anybody else able to get in?
I was not. It said I needed access.
Darn it. I thought I switched it. Okay.
It said request access. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just switched it. So try again.
Got it.
Okay, good. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go to Loudon Now, which is, by the way, Megan, not on our media list, so we should add them. This is a local paper that a lot of people read around where I live. And here are the letters. And by the way, I want to just point out this letter, Amelia Sargent's letter. We're going to come back to that because it's a brilliant letter that really makes a lot of the points I'm going to make with you. So I'm going to open it in another browser. So here I am, like, how the heck do I do a letter to the editor? So I'm going to go under Contact Us, and there it is, send a letter. Now, I just happen to know this about this paper. I went to our other local paper a lot of times, and for the life of me, I could not figure out how to send in a letter. I happen to know because I've been sending them letters for a long time. But worst comes to worst, if you know they do letters, because you can tell under the opinion piece that they do letters, and you can't find it anywhere on their website, just call them up and ask them. So in this case, there's always requirements, and every single paper has a different requirement. So the first thing you want to do is basically research all the places that would be interested in your opinion, basically, if it's your local. But by the way, like The Hill or USA Today, they would all be interested in your opinion too. It's just really hard to get into a national paper. But doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but I would start with your local papers. In this case, you can write up to 500 words, and you can either send it by mail or you can send it by email. So I would like to just take a few minutes and just have you all look through the papers that you got from the store that you know of, Google them, and try to see if you can figure out how it works to send in a letter to the editor and fill out that spreadsheet. And we'll just spend like maybe 3 minutes on this because we have a lot more stuff to get through. So. I found it for the Loudoun Times. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but why don't you keep doing that research as homework and try to fill this out? Because if we can fill this out and share it with other activists, we'll get a lot more stuff in there around climate, which would be a good thing. So I want to just read a letter that I got the last time I submitted to the Washington Post to give an example of the kind of things they might ask you. So your letter to the editor is being considered for publication. We would like to confirm that you wrote the letter using your own name and did not acquire any portion of it from other sources other than properly attributed quotes. Basically, they don't want you to plagiarize and they want to know it's your voice. Have you sent or posted this letter or a similar letter to any other media or internet forum, including a blog? So there, the Washington Post requires exclusivity. That is not the case for most little papers. They're just looking for content and they don't care. Like I wrote a letter once with a bunch of MIT graduates and we sent it and we got it published in Kentucky. We got it published in Minnesota. We got it published all over the place, but under each of our names with our and they didn't care because but the Washington Post would care a lot about that. So if you're submitting to the Post, that should be the only one, and wait till they basically have rejected you before you submit it somewhere else. And by the way, they won't tell you that they've rejected you. You just kind of figure it out after they haven't told you for a couple of weeks. And by the way, even then, I once submitted to the Houston Chronicle, which is an enormous paper. Houston's a huge city. Literally 6 hours after we submitted it to Pensacola, Florida, speaking of the Panhandle, it got accepted by Pensacola like immediately. And then Houston Chronicle came back and said, oh, we want it. And I was like, you just missed it. So what we did was we rewrote it. We did another version that was different enough that we could submit it to the other paper. And we got two really great media hits out of that piece. And speaking of which, that's another thing I wanted to tell you. I wrote that letter. It's about mold and the impact of climate change and mold on human health. And who am I to talk about that? I'm not a doctor. I co-wrote it with an MD, and I was more of a climate expert. And together we would write really really great pieces. So that's another technique, is if you're really interested in a specific aspect and you can build access, which we'll talk about later with Twitter, you know, you can submit something. And another story on that, there's this really famous scientist named Michael Mann. And one of my media people asked me if I would write a piece about methane and the Permian Basin in Texas. Anyway, I was like, okay, but I don't really feel like I have enough scientific, you know, chutzpah to really get it into any of the big papers. So I said, why don't I see if Michael Mann will write it with me? And he said yes, amazingly. And we got it into the Hill. And then he recognized me in his book, which was so like amazing. I'm like actually I'm kind of friends with Michael Mann now. These are the kind of things that can happen as you work in this space and amplify your voice. I just tell you that story, not so much to brag about me, but just to hopefully inspire you that like you can make your voice bigger and bigger and bigger through using some of the techniques that we're going to talk about today. So co-writing is definitely one of them, especially if it's outside of your expertise. The other thing you need to really make sure you understand is the word count for.
Hey, Andrea, before you move on,
Mhm.
Denise has had her hand up.
Oh, thank you, Denise.
Hi. Oh, I didn't want to interrupt while you were talking.
yeah.
I
In fact, I'm
tried
going to stop sharing. Hold on. Go ahead.
just a quick question about the spreadsheet. So I thought you asked us to type in information, but I'm on view only, so I can't add anything to the spreadsheet.
That is annoying. Okay, thank you. I changed it to editor.
Okay, thank you.
See, we all do things wrong. I am demonstrating for you. Okay, that would be why there's nothing in there. I'm like, why isn't anybody finding anything? All right. So anyway, word count. So the Washington Post, for example, if you're doing a local piece for their opinion paper, which I don't even really know what that is anymore on the hard copy, it used to be an insert, you can do 750 words. But for a letter to the editor is 250 words. And by the way, these counts change over time as different editors come on board. So that is one of the things I check every single time. And if they like you and they like the paper, I mean, what you've written, they might come back and say, it's too long, can you shorten it? But probably not. If they're not used to hearing from you, they'll just reject you. So that is one of the things. You got to know the word count requirements, and definitely, you know, use the whatever tool in the text editor that you use to count your words. Any questions on that?
Andrea,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to people who would like to give their opinion, but they're not necessarily, or they don't identify themselves as experts in the field?
Yeah, so actually I'm going to share my screen again and show you an example of why you don't need to be an expert. So this is a letter I found when I did the exercise over the weekend. It's a woman writing about gun control. And she basically tells this amazing story. And I'll put this actually in the chat so you can read it yourself. But it's just a story about being at the Tyson's Mall with her family and what happened. There was a loud noise, and apparently everybody thought it was an active shooter. And what happened when her little girl was like in a different store buying. Anyway, it's a terrible story. And I found it really, really mesmerizing. And basically then she just says, I think we should ban assault rifles. So you don't have to be a super expert on it. You just have to have an opinion, and you have to, usually we all have some kind of story we can tell about why we have that opinion. So this is just a great example of like, this is, you know, she obviously knows a little bit because she at the end writes about the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But basically, Megan, you have to have an opinion. That's that's the main thing. If you, and, oh, they say to become a great writer, you should read a lot. Read, if you want to write novels, you should read a lot of novels. If you really want to learn how to be a good opinion writer, just start reading the opinion page for a while and you'll see what I'm talking about. So it's very, they leave all the fact finding and being the super duper expert, to like reporters and the people they quote. You're the community voice, you're the community opinion. Okay. Like that River Farm piece I wrote, I didn't know anything about it except for what I read in the article. That's all I knew. But I had a strong opinion about it and I got the top letter. So, okay. So then let's say you get published. Yay. First of all, celebrate. That's really cool. I always send it to my mom, except about climate change because she doesn't believe in climate change. But anyway, that's another story. And but you don't want to stop there. Then you want to amplify it. So first of all, I send it out to people who matter in my life. Like I'll often send it to my board of directors, things like that. And then you want to amplify it on social media because a lot of people are not going to see it unless you actually send it out. And then another thing I just want to warn you about, if you've never done this before, is the comments on a letter. Sometimes they can be pretty upsetting because you're going to attract the trolls and the people who really disagree with you. Don't worry about it. Basically, I just don't read the really nasty comments, and then I like the ones that, have agree with me and, are amplifying what I'm saying, but don't let that stop you. Because you're the one who got the letter, you're the one who got into the paper, and their comments don't really matter. But it's a very interesting part of the whole experience. Also, a couple of best practices. If you're referring to something specific, like the other day, I wrote a piece about the Air Pollution Control Board and what they're doing on RGGI. Now, I can't assume even the Washington Post knows it's really important what's happening, but I can't assume if they haven't written an article about it, that they know what the heck I'm talking about. So I provided links to the specific thing that the Air Pollution Control Board was doing so they could just fact check it like that. So if you do know something and you are including something from your expertise, be sure to just give those easy links. So that it's really, you basically want to make it as easy for them to publish it as you can.
Sorry, Andrea, sorry, before you go, for the links, please, you put that in the email that you send to them, or you put it in the body of the document, because that is not for public consumption. This is for them. Yeah?
That's just for them. And every once in a while, the Washington Post will actually keep my links often because they do it online. Obvious, when it goes to print, you can't have a link in there. So the other thing I'll do besides like putting a link, like if it's sometimes you have a newspaper that makes you do a form and you can't include a link, but then you could put it in parentheses for them to fact check. Does that make sense? Or you could even put it at the end if you want to, these are the places to just see what I'm talking about. And I'll even put sometimes a link to another newspaper if it's the only paper that's covered whatever event I'm talking about.
Okay, thanks.
So it's better, obviously, to put a link to an article that they wrote, but if they didn't cover it, you didn't cover it. Leanne, I saw your hand go up. You're good?
I'm good. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. A few more things. Use mustly language. And what do I mean by that? Say what you mean. Don't put a lot of extra words. I told Megan to buy this book, so I'll tell all of you. There's this wonderful book called Elements of Style by Strunk and White. I'm going to put that in chat actually really quick. They tell you this better than I could possibly ever do it. You can find this book in practically any used bookstore, and there's a, used books on Amazon. I highly recommend it. People use a lot of extraneous words in their writing. So once you've written a piece, just get it out of you, then go back and go, is there anything kind of just extraneous in there that doesn't really add to what I'm trying to say? Because you want to be as must be as straightforward as you can. Tell them your opinion like it is. Okay, then I like to usually finish my letters with some kind of call to action. So like you can see in the letter I shared from Loud and Now, she kind of does that. It can be a call for action for elected officials. It can be a call to action for the community. That's just often a really nice way to end up. But these are the kind of techniques, once you like read, I really encourage you to read letters, and especially the ones that resonate with you. Try to kind of deconstruct them and see, how did this person write this? You know, at this point, I can just write a letter to the editor because I've been doing it for so long. But, you know, when you're starting out, you might want to just kind of create a playbook that you like how they did it. They kind of, and usually, you know, you want to put your kind of thesis at the very beginning, then back it up with, you know, your opinions of why that's important, and then end with some kind of strong call to action or something like that. Okay. All right. So if we had more time, I would be stopping here and asking you to write a letter to the editor, but I'm going to just power on because especially with Twitter, we have a lot to go through. Okay, so I call Twitter climate Twitter at this point. And it's funny when you go, oops, raised hand from Rick. Rick, did you ever raise?
Yeah, okay, unmuted. Do we have an editor, or is there somebody that is, you know,
At
that can
Facts?
read the, what was that?
Do we at Facts have an editor? No. That would be a really good volunteer for us to hunt for, like maybe some, because I bet there's like a lot of ex-journalists and editors who live in the Northern Virginia region. That would be a wonderful person for us to find.
Yeah.
And by the way, I want to say, if you do find a good editor, you want to be humble and take their advice, because that's partly why I get published, because I worked with a fantastic editor who was an editor for USA Today for years. And I just lucked into working with him as a colleague, and he taught me how to be a better writer. So you definitely want to take their advice, especially if you're not getting published. And sometimes it can be like, well, he always used to say to me, if I've changed the meaning of what you're saying, definitely change it back because you're the expert. But basically he knows how to get stuff into newspapers. So Rick, let's put it on our list of volunteers to recruit. Any other questions on letters? Okay. By the way, I didn't say this. I have a friend who I swear she gets a letter to the editor in our local papers every month. So send often, and don't get hurt if you get rejected. I'd say the Post takes at this point maybe 3 out of 5 letters that I send in. So, and if you get rejected, send it to another paper, you know, because you can get published elsewhere. Okay. Time to go onto Twitter. Are we good? Okay. So can everybody come on camera if you can? Because I just want to see, or raise your hand virtually. Who all uses Twitter? Okay. Pretty low number. Okay. 1, 2, maybe half of us. Okay. For those of you who don't use Twitter, why don't you use it? Anybody?
It's just not something that comes to my mind that's saying, oh, I should be, you know, jumping online and telling everybody everything that I think.
Okay. Anybody else?
Kind of like getting, it was, I agree with Rick. For me, it's kind of like, you know, getting something in the paper. You know, I'm not there yet, but I need to be there. I follow, I don't, and I might, but I follow. That's all I do right now. So.
Okay. So I'm going to give you all a challenge. First of all, if you're not on Twitter, I really want you to get on Twitter because it's important for the climate work. And I'm going to try to talk you into it through this training. we'll go through the other platforms quickly because I just don't think they're as powerful for climate. But if you all disagree, we can argue about that later, because I'd like to hear what you have to say. By the way, when I say argue, I mean like legal argument. We won't get in a fight, I promise. Anyway, so Twitter is just, I've been working on climate change for 21 years, and Twitter is just where I've ended up gravitating to because it's just brilliant for climate. It is where, number one, the climate scientists are. So for example, I never pay attention to when a big climate report is coming out. Like I don't go look at sources that track that kind of thing, because I always know it from Twitter because I follow a bunch of climate scientists and I always know they start talking about it. It's coming out on Friday and then it comes out and everybody's tweeting about it. And I get like the best information from the climate scientists that I follow. The other people who use Twitter, I almost said religiously, I shouldn't say that in a faith alliance, but they use it like all the time, is elected officials. And you might think it's just that intern that they hired to do their social media, and the elected officials never look. Just the other day when the climate bill passed the Senate, Brian Schatz, I think that's how you say his name. He's a senator from Hawaii. He was so excited and he kept tweeting. I'm like, I think that's the senator. That doesn't sound like the staffer, because it was just like too authentically, like totally stoked. And sure enough, somebody said something about the poor intern tweeting in the middle of the night or something. And the senator was like, no, it's me. It's me. It's really me. So anyway, and then local elected officials, definitely, most of them don't have staff to do that kind of thing. And I will tell you, the chair of Fairfax County has responded to me directly, and I know it was him. I've had the chair of Prince William County get into a whole thing with me because we disagreed about something. It was definitely her. So even though it might be the staffer, a lot of the time it's the actual elected official. And again, it's something about the power, like Trump definitely was doing his own tweeting. We all know that. There's just something about that medium that works for elected officials. So climate scientists, elected officials, the other people who use it all the time are like the staffers on the Hill, climate experts who like are kind of advocate experts. So for me, it's a whole like just this world of expertise that I can get to really quickly. And I think of it as like the best curated paper that I could ever have, that's, got the stuff I'm really interested in, which in my case is solving the climate crisis. So hopefully that will inspire you to actually get on. And then it's how you use Twitter that matters. And I think that really turns people off. So now I'm going to just talk. So first of all, for creating an account, it's really trivial to do it. If you have any problems getting online, me and Megan can help you. And I'm just going to say that. Please get in touch with us and we will help you get on Twitter. Then you want to follow reputable sources. Now, even I've been doing Twitter and climate stuff for years, and still sometimes I'll retweet something and I'll think 3 minutes later, how good was that information I just retweeted? Because that is one of the true problems with social media, is an echo chamber for false information. And I want to tell you, even the best sources like the Washington Post, the last time they wrote an article that had me as an elected official in, they got my name wrong. The Washington Post got my name wrong. I'm going to tell you another story. The Washington Post once put in that I got Loudoun County to give $156 million to one nonprofit. And I saw it online. I called the reporter. I'm like, yeah, if only I could do that for facts, right, Rick? Anyway, I called him. I'm like, it was $156,000. And he goes, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God, did it already go to print? It had already gone to print on the top of the Metro section, above the fold. And then they used it, of course, in my campaign against me. I mean, it was just awful. So even the Washington Post can make just the biggest screw ups in facts. So you just have to, And that's like, they have fact checkers. So you just have to remember that even reputable sources sometimes make mistakes. So if anything feels off to you, don't retweet it. And then you really want to just like pay attention. Is it Michael Mann? Is it Katharine Hayhoe? Is it one of the truly reputable climate scientists that you're retweeting? Or is it something else? So the other thing that happens, speaking of reputable sources, sometimes someone will come back and argue with you, and we'll talk about settings and blocking people and stuff, but I often go and click, and if they have like 0 followers and they're following 50 people, it's probably a bot or something like that. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that don't let it wig you out. Don't let it stop you. There's so much really good information. You just have to be mindful of it. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay, followers. So some people like really like they count their power by how many followers they have, which is true. Like if you go, like I have over 1,000 followers now, I have a lot more reach on Twitter than I used to have, but I don't worry about that. The followers will come. If you use Twitter, it will come. So don't worry about that too much. But if you do want to increase your followers, one of the best ways to do it is to follow someone you respect. Often they'll follow you back. So the best way to get followers is to follow somebody else. So if you look at my account, I've got twice as many that I follow than follow me. And I personally try to keep it 2 to 1. I don't know why.
What is your account?
My account here, I'll put it in the chat. Oops. Yeah, by the way, you should follow me and I'll follow you. So we'll each get 1 new follower. And by the way, it'd be cool if you're willing, I could send out our Twitter handles to each other and we should follow each other. That would actually be a really cool thing to do. Okay, so posting. First of all, Twitter is such a brilliant medium. You can only, 156 characters, I think. Is that right? So you can 140, well, whatever it is. Yeah. You think I would know it, but it forces you to be short in what you have to say. And sometimes I'll say, this is amazing, and retweet like something that somebody posted that I think is amazing news. And, you don't have to say a whole lot. It's often, you can just retweet too, which is a nice thing to do. And also if you like something, it will start showing up in other people's Twitter feeds, especially if they tend to interact with you a lot. But, it's just not that hard. So I want to set a goal. First, set up a Twitter account if you don't have one. And then for all of us, try to tweet 1 thing a day. Just 1 thing a day. Take 5 minutes of your day. And you will see the power of Twitter work for you and why it's such a great thing. And I'm going to tell you some more stories of why I think it's such a great thing. So the other thing that drives up people seeing your tweets is media. So if I was more facile, I would show you, I did this tweet about my backyard garden. I was just sitting watching a beautiful sunset. My plants look pretty. I took a picture of it and I tweeted it out. And I said, it's not nature, but it's, my home that I've hung on to because it's going to be walking distance to Metro. So I got in a good smart growth message with this beautiful picture, and it got more likes than I've gotten in a long time on anything else. And like the other day, I just replied to somebody who wrote something really honestly stupid, and he has 190,000. He wrote this stupid thing about exurban and rural areas. And if you go on my Twitter account, you'll see it's fairly recent. And I just was like, that I just don't agree with you and how you put this. I forget what I said, but that's gotten all kinds of likes. People really resonated with it. So again, I would just want to say, like, having a strong opinion and letting it out there, it's exactly like letters to the editor. And your opinion does matter. People find it interesting. And then it's hilarious. You watch somebody's opinion like blow up and they get like, thousands of people following them all of a sudden. That's never happened to me, but it could happen to you. Okay. Liking, that's another thing you just want to be wary of. Like, just be wary of your personal reputation. You don't want to like too much crazy stuff. because everybody can see what you liked. If you go like 4 columns over, there's liked, and people can literally, especially James, Megan, those of you young in your career, watch what you're liking because it can come back to haunt you. And I have been known to hit like by accident, like my finger just hit the wrong part of the screen. Unlike it, make sure you're not liking anything that's not really your values, okay? Okay, replying is a really good way to build rapport. So I have become buddies with Michael Mann to a large part. I mean, I'm not buddies with him, but he responds to me, and we've written a piece together because of Twitter. I just started liking his stuff and responding and retweeting, and he is probably the best person I've seen at using Twitter to build a lot of access with a lot of people and vice versa. So if you want to see it done by a pro, and Catherine Hayhoe as well. Okay. So this is just a little thing that people don't know. If you start, like say you wanted to write to Catherine Hayhoe, who I think is K Hayhoe. If you started a tweet with @Catherine K Hayhoe, which is how you tag somebody. If you start the tweet with it, it will go into the replies. It won't go into your main Twitter feed. To make it go into your main Twitter feed, you have to put a period before it. So I'm going to just put that as an example with my Twitter account in chat. Do you see that? You just put a period before, and then it will go into your regular Twitter feed.
And that's only because you're starting with the @ symbol. You don't have to do that every time.
Exactly. I can tell Denise is a Twitter person. I've been watching your reactions. Okay. So lists. Lists is another thing that you really want to pay attention to and work with. And most people don't. So like there's private lists and public lists. If you don't mark it as private, the person gets notified that you're adding them to the list. So for instance, I have a list called Build Access, and it's people that I want to interact with more and get to know. Well, I don't want them to see that I added them to a list that says Build Access. That would be kind of embarrassing. So that's my private list. But I have a public list called Climate Scientists, which, by the way, you can go and see under my lists, and you could just follow all those people that I have under Climate Scientists. So, and through lists, you can basically see what are all the climate scientists now. It's a way to kind of cut through the cacophony of, especially like I'm following more than 2,000 people now. Twitter's very random for me. So if I really want to go see what the climate scientists specifically are saying, I go to my lists. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, though we could do a whole like 2-hour class on Twitter and do exercises, but go check that out. Okay. Settings are your friend. So any social media program that is bugging the heck out of you, you probably have a setting wrong. Like if you don't like, well, just look at your settings basically, and there's probably a way to stop whatever is bugging you. And the one I really want to talk to you all about, because Twitter can be a real nasty place. And so like the other day, I kept it around so I could show you, but I'm not going to bother. But this person started a reply to me with the word sweetie. Okay, wait, you want to make me mad? Call me sweetie when you don't even know who I am. And it was this very condescending, nasty reply to something I said about the Inflation Reduction Act. And, normally I would just block that person. So you can just get rid of those people. You do not, if you're an elected official, you can't block people, and you shouldn't. You get sued over that. If you're a private citizen, block and move on. And before you do that, though, it's always interesting to go and see who the person is. And sure enough, Sweetie Man was a bot, and they were just trying to get me going and waste my time. So there's bots out there that I swear they probably had a bot that was searching for anything about them, that act, and bugging people. So I don't know how that works. Yeah, Leanne?
It's a bot.
So a bot is a robot.
I know, you're right, but how can you tell?
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. So I clicked on the sweetie person, 0 followers. And they were following like 50 people. It was just clearly not a real person. And then you can also go look at what they've been tweeting and you can just smell it. It's so like, they're so obvious that it's not a real person, that it's just like, you know, this bot meant to annoy you and to try to steer the conversation. And sometimes you'll see, thanks, Russian bot, in reply back, you know, because the person's calling out the Russians or whoever are behind the bots. And don't ask me how bots work. I don't know how they get it going, but there's no question you're especially in the climate space, you're gonna run into this. So basically, don't let anybody get your goat, just block them and move on. Okay, all right. And there's all kinds of privacy settings, so just get to know your settings and you know, I'm happy to help if anything's bothering you. Basically, don't let that not let you tune into the power of Twitter for climate. Okay, so best practices. First of all, I pretty much stick to climate, but I do something personal once in a while. You do want to just be a real person. Like the other day, I tweeted that I was really happy at a festival in Leesburg, and the president of my old organization liked it. She was happy to see I was happy, you know? So, okay, then for the purposes of what we're doing, first of all, you are, by retweeting good information, you are helping get out onto in the Twitter universe, the Twitterverse, as they call it, you're helping to lift up good information. And that's a good thing. So if that's all you do is like and retweet other people's good stuff, that's still really valuable. Okay, because you help change. The more like somebody gets, the more eyeballs will see what they have to say. It's just kind of how the algorithms work. But I really do want to encourage you to tweet once a day, just once a day. And once you start following really good people, it's super easy to find, like, you know, follow the good climate reporters. It's just, you'll see, there's always something good to tweet about in this space. And then I use Twitter a lot for lobbying elected officials. Not that many people do this, but I do it regularly. So for instance, Virginia used to be West Virginia and Virginia. So I decided I was gonna, Mark Warner said publicly at a town hall that he was friends with Joe Manchin and talking with him about a lot about climate change. So I went through a whole period where I was tweeting at Tim Kaine, Mark Warner, and Joe Manchin about Virginia leading on climate. And, you know, sometimes I would be banging them on the head because something awful was happening. It's like, why aren't you moving? And sometimes I was, you know, cajoling and coaxing and being nice, like just all kinds of, but basically I wanted them to know, like, I expected them to act. And then of course, when they actually did the right thing, I give them lots of love. And so that's just really important. And so this particularly works well with local elected officials because they don't hear from many people. So I do think that honey works better than vinegar. However, sometimes elected officials do really bad stuff, like try to put data centers on the border of national parks. And, you know, you don't have to be a jerk about it, but it's okay to call them out on if they're doing something that you disagree with. So basically you just tag them. So I get in my head at any one time, I kind of like, I know how to get Joe Manchin in my tweets. I know how to like kind of, I start writing and Joe Manchin comes up and I can pick him. I still don't know his Twitter handle after all this time, but sometimes I'll just open up another tab and just Google Joe Manchin Twitter handle and it will come up for me. And then I go back and I type it in. But basically at Andrea McJimsey is my Twitter handle. If you tweet at me with that, if you say your opinion and tweet it at me, I'll see it. It will show up in my notifications. The other thing that I would encourage you to do, if you want us to see something in the Faith Alliance, is to tag the Faith Alliance. And I'll put that in. That's Faith for Climate. So it's cool later when, yes, Megan?
No, I was just gonna say I added it to the chat.
Oh, thank you. You already did it. Okay. So if you want us to see something, so maybe we can amplify it, please tag it. And later we're going to do an exercise and it would be really awesome if you could tag us so we know that you did it. We, by the way, these classes are thanks to a wonderful small grant we got, and we would love to tell the funder that, you know, they actually tweeted. So, okay. And with any of these, as you're moving forward, if you're not used to Twitter, we can help you because it will take us 2 minutes to help you pass whatever bump you're running into. Okay. Okay. So another thing we're going to do later on is a photo petition. And I just want to say, I want to show you a couple examples. So like I can take a picture of myself with something like this, you know, and take a selfie and then tweet it at somebody. This is nice, but it's clearly some organization made it and it's not very, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's not me. So I did this. I took a IKEA box and I wrote this message on it, which was really hard to get into a selfie because it's too big. So I recommend a 8x11 sheet of paper. But I tweeted at Jeff McKay, the chair of Fairfax County, and I swear to God, I was like, I should go look at it. It was like 6 minutes later, he wrote back and said that they were going to do aggressive implementation of their new climate action plan. So it like totally worked. I got him in black and white saying what we really wanted. So I just want to say, like, pretend like you're at an in-person rally, but it's just online. So for instance, we're doing a regional greenhouse gas rally on August 31, and a lot of us won't be able to make it. We're going to do it at the Department of Environmental Quality offices all over the state, but still a lot of us won't make it. So we're doing a photo petition online. So basically an online rally around that. So today we're going to do some photo petitions thanking the elected officials. Okay. And I'm going to just do the exercise all at once at the end. Okay, so other social media, any questions on Twitter right now? Okay. All right, so other social media, there's a lot of platforms. There's Donald Trump's new platform, which I don't even know what it's called, and I'm not planning on joining it because I think it would upset me too much just because of who I am personally, but it's probably a powerful platform if you want to get on there. But the big mama platform that's got like the most users of all is Facebook. Sorry, I said big mama. Maybe that wasn't an appropriate comment. It's the giant social medium. I have a ton of followers on Facebook because I was an elected official. I put posts about my cats. And it's partially just because there's a lot of people from my community and I was an elected official. So I'm kind of not using Facebook for climate. And I don't know why. I probably should. And this is a note to self to start using Facebook for climate. It is where I like my dad uses Facebook a lot. I think of Facebook as like my dad's platform. It does tend to have a lot of older people on. It's a comfortable place for older people. So like probably, you know, good messages around grandparents and climate change, you know, probably would be powerful on that platform. Facts is on Facebook. So anyway, this is one we really should use, and I just don't use it very often. Does
I would
anybody?
like to add, if I may, that my
Yes.
dad uses it and he just reposts the things that he thinks are correct. And I have to sit him down and have a little talk with him every day about how you just shouldn't repost one-sided political views that are not factual, and especially when they are against climate science. So I don't spend a lot of time there either fighting the climate fight, but I really hope if you're comfortable there that you will.
Okay. Yeah. And that's your dad, was it? Yeah. My mom is a total climate denier, but she doesn't use social media, so I don't have to worry about it. It's so much fun. Oh, there's so much bad info out there. It really does matter to amplify the good stuff. Okay, Instagram's another one. This is the one I think of as my nephews. Like my 22-year-old nephew, every time he posts, he gets like 320 likes. He's the captain of his running team and people love him. But I post, I get maybe 2 likes. I haven't posted since 2017 personally. So anyway, is anybody else an Instagram user? I want to talk about the power of it. Maybe James, do you use Instagram?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
What do you have to say? Do people do climate stuff on it?
Nope.
I think it's definitely more prevalent on Twitter. Yeah. But so yeah, Twitter's more my go-to for that. I've just found it to be more useful.
Instagram in the past, or I mean, I've used Instagram a lot just for kind of how you have used Twitter in the you check news on it sometimes. I don't rely on that for my news. But it's similar to Twitter in the fact that you can use the hashtags and connect over the mutual tags and stuff. But it's better if you have good pictures and it doesn't have to be like a consistent layout, but I would definitely second James. I think Twitter is better for climate work.
Okay. Joe,
I
I think
also agree. Yeah, I also agree with that. I also check Instagram, and in Instagram I see a lot of the like the naturalists and the whole environmental activities, but not but for climate change is not that very much. So I don't see sort of the climate experts and sort of in the Instagram very active and moving as you see it in Twitter. So for me, it would be like Twitter and LinkedIn, sort of the places where you see more sort of the wealth and the heaviness of the expertise, going around on information and Twitter, all because it's so quick to write a little phrase and little to keep information circulating and rolling. I think that makes it very valid and very useful in that sense. Like what you were saying, I get all my info from there because it is very quick. It is like going to the supermarket and seeing the magazines, which ones are the actors that all of this and that and whatnot. Yes, because it's very quick. So it is sort of the headlines piece, and so you just get a sense of what is going on. So with level of credibility, you have your good followers. So for me, it would be Twitter, would be the place, and LinkedIn, it's another dimension as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and LinkedIn is the more professional, I would say, posts that I see. So I do see climate stuff on there, and it's definitely more professional stuff. I don't know, but I don't do it a lot. Anybody want to say anything about LinkedIn if you use it a lot? Okay.
I use it because of on my previous life, we were very much into that thing. But so I do. I'm personally active on LinkedIn, yes, but Twitter, I think that it is for what we are speaking here and circulating info and everything. It would be sort of my go-to, basically, personally.
Okay. This is good because it's making me realize I'm not like missing the boat too much. So I wanted to say two that I love Pinterest. If you're at all a visual person, Pinterest, I'll put it in the
Pinterest, yeah.
And if you look at my account, you'll see, like, I used to be in historic preservation, and it's a very visual medium, and the way you can just share, like, so I used to do like period parties and be like, I don't know what people wore in the 1920s. This is literally how I started using Pinterest, was doing research for these parties I was throwing. But it turned into this whole like project that I love. And I ended up, for climate, I have a Pinterest board for climate rallies. And I'm actually really glad I created that. So I wanted to just encourage you, if you're doing anything that's very visual, that could be a really cool place for us to kind of document the climate movement. And in fact, I was looking back at 2013, which is 9 years ago now, but I was remembering looking back at it, that like I was at a tiny rally. There was like 100 of us at the White House with Bill McKibben, and there's a picture of me and Bill holding a sign together. And I was like, wow, we have come such a long way since 2013. And it was very kind of affirming that all this work we do actually has built a movement in a very big way. Because, you know, Bill McKibben is a rock star and we only got like 100 people. It was the teeniest little, I got to know him. That was nice. But so anyway, I encourage you to take a look at Pinterest. And if you want some inspiration, I've used it a lot back in the day. And then TikTok is the one, like, it seems all the teenagers are doing. It was hilarious when Joe and I first met at a cafe. There were these two girls clearly doing TikTok videos right outside the window where we were sitting. It was a hilarious experience. But I went and looked at it today. I was like, oh my God, you could spend so much time looking at really weird things on this platform. But my computers were listening to me clearly and started sending me stuff about TikTok. So apparently professors are starting to use TikTok and doing like 60-second like little pieces on philosophy. And I was thinking, wow, what an interesting way, because so many people are using TikTok now. It inspired me to want to think about how could we maybe, like, I could imagine little videos of maybe some of our amazing pastors talking about, you know, what does the Bible tell us about taking care of creation or something like that, and getting through to X number of people that way. Wouldn't mean much to a lot of people, but maybe, you know, X number of people would mean a whole lot too, right? So, because TikTok is super random, I'll say that. I don't, does anybody use it a lot? Is like somebody would have to teach me how to focus. I don't think there's a lot of climate on it, right, James?
Yeah, I use it. It's just random. It's just like entertainment. I don't think it would work. It would be very hard because it's just random. That's all it is.
It's, if you've never looked at TikTok, you gotta go look at me. It really is. It's super random
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
there's
maybe
no organization to it, really.
Yeah. Well, basically, so my old field, I have a master's degree in interactive media, and I'm fascinated by all these different media and who it reaches. And it seems to me in our quest to grow the climate movement, these social media platforms are really powerful. And I personally would like to kind of get beyond Twitter. I'm definitely in the Twitter lane, and I want to try to get elsewhere. And we do have, for facts, we have an Instagram account, we have LinkedIn, and we have, what's the other? Oh, Facebook. You know, it'd be cool if you all wanted to help us try to figure out if we could reach a different audience. Because oh, and I put a link in the document I sent you to David Bowie talking about the internet. It maybe I should play. Can I play that for you guys really quickly?
Yeah.
I saw Rick
Mhm.
smile. We're from that generation. Let me see if I can find
Yeah.
it.
Is it a video?
It's a video.
I might suggest that everybody that turn their video off for, so we can see hers better, bandwidth wise.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea. All right. So I'm going to share the screen and play David Bowie.
Anybody can say anything. And it all adds up to what? I mean, it seems to me there's nothing cohesive about it in the way that there was something cohesive about the youth revolution in music.
Oh, but absolutely. And because I think that we, at the time, up until at least the mid-70s, really felt that we were still living under the, in the guise of a single and absolute created society where there were known truths and known lies, and there was no kind of duplicity or pluralism about the things that we believed in. That started to break down rapidly in the 70s, and the idea of duality in the way that we live. There are always 2, 3, 4, 5 sides to every question. That this singularity disappeared, and that, I believe, has produced such a medium as the internet, which absolutely establishes and shows us that we are living in total fragmentation. I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg. I think the potential of what the internet is going to do to society, both good and bad, is unimaginable. I think we're actually on the cusp of something exhilarating and terrifying.
It's just a tool, though, isn't it?
No, it's not. No. No, it's an alien life form.
What do you think? I mean, when you think then about the
Is there
future
life on Mars? Yes, it's just landed here.
But it's simply a different delivery system there. You're arguing about something more profound.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about the actual context, and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico. It's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about.
Okay.
But what is
Whoops.
it?
Sorry.
Visionary.
He's such- yeah. For those of you that are younger and might not know David Bowie, he was truly one of the great artists of our generation.
When was that?
What was
The
that?
video? When was the video?
I don't know. I'm guessing
He's so-
a while back, maybe, because he's dead. He's been dead for a while. May he
And
rest.
there he's very young. Yes, in that video he's very young. Yes.
So it's probably 15 years ago, maybe. Yeah. But anyway, the point of that is just we are in a really fragmented place as a society, and there's no question that the social media. So I am not actually advocating that we all. I think Twitter is a great way to kind of be in touch with the scientists and the reporters and the really, really reputable information really quickly. But we've got to figure out how to reach others and also reach across this cultural divide that we find ourselves in. So definitely please don't add to it. And I think especially those of us who come from faith communities, at least what I was taught is, turn the other cheek, love your neighbors and your enemies. And I think about that kind of teaching a lot as I deal with social media, but you don't even have to get into it, just block and move on. So, okay. Is there any other platforms that people use that think we should think about? Okay. All right, so we're going to stick for now with basically Twitter and writing letters to the editor, I think, at Facts at least. And I'd love to work with each and every one of you to increase your power in those areas. And then hopefully, because this whole boot camp is about grassroots organizing, hopefully you could pick 5 people in your life to engage and get to know better and bring them into this work. Maybe a great writer who you could get to write letters with you or ghostwrite for you. By the way, ghostwriting is fine. Maybe not for the Washington Post, but if you know someone who's a great writer who could help you get your, and you don't feel like you're that strong, it's totally fine to work with somebody else. Okay. So let's move into the exercise part. So does anybody on the call not know about what happened last week? Because I just don't want to bore you by repeating it. There's no shame in not knowing what happened last week. I'm talking about the Inflation Reduction Act that got passed. Does anybody need kind of a...
I would love to hear your description of it.
Okay. All right. So basically, it is the biggest act that Congress has ever passed on climate solutions. That's in a nutshell. They finally did something significant. The the bipartisan infrastructure law that they passed earlier had some good stuff like EV charging in it, but it didn't do nearly what we needed. This is by far the largest investment. And I put a link into the document that you have on the Inflation Reduction Act. First of all, is the act from congress.gov. Talk about the reputable source. It's where they post all their laws and kind of where they're at. And right now it's going to Biden to be signed, and there'll be big celebrations when it gets signed. I put in a reputable source for what the Inflation Reduction Act means. It's the Rhodium Group. They do a lot of the modeling that, for instance, is used at the United Nations negotiations. They are like this hardcore climate data, climate solutions modeling group. So I really trust them. People that I trust, I've seen like in meetings with them, like they are a very reputable source, and they say that it's going to create, I forget what the number is if anybody's looking at that link, but very significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Now, it was a compromise bill, so there's stuff that a lot of environmentalists are upset about, like pipeline stuff that apparently is going to be in the future, though. So maybe it will never happen. Some kind of promise around a pipeline. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But the bottom line is, I'm convinced by having read things from a lot of people that I really respect, that it is a very, very significant step forward, and that it is the definite rightful time to say thank you, because with elected officials, you want to encourage them when they do the right thing, even if it's not 100% what you wanted. Like, you want to move them down the path of doing more, and celebrating and saying thank you is just a crucially important step in that. So I wanted to propose for our exercises today that we figure out who our congressperson is, if you don't know who it is, and I put in a link who represents me where you can figure that out. And then write some tweets to thank them. And it could be as simple as, thank you so much at Rep Beyer. Don't quote me on that. That might not be his handle, but whatever is at Representative Beyer's handle. This climate change matters to me so much because I want to leave a better world for my grandchildren. That would be an example of just totally your opinion, and saying thank you. And then I would recommend retweeting the tweet, the reputable source tweet from the Rhodium group that says it's going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by X amount. Because it would be good for that tweet to have more play on Twitter, because again, they're the modelers who are really, crunching through the numbers. So
Andrea, we had a couple hands raised.
yes.
Leanne, I saw yours was up before, or do you still have something to say? You're on mute.
I found my answer. Sorry.
Okay. So
And
I'm going to put an example.
Also, Jeanette has her hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was very disappointed. I mean, I understand about the climate portion of the Inflation Reduction Act, and I think it's wonderful. I was very disappointed in, well, we all know that Manchin and his family are very invested in fossil fuels. So in order to get Manchin on board, I heard that Biden promised him the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which will run across Virginia, and so that the oil companies can sell their oil on the East Coast, and basically screws our state. So I wasn't real thrilled with that, although the rest of it sounds very nice.
Yeah, and I read somewhere, and I can't tell you where, it was probably on Twitter, and I don't know if I liked it, so I can find it again, that somehow that's a future thing, and they need to do something else, some other kind of legislation, and whatever the pundit was saying was basically, of course, we know that future bills don't always follow through, and this might have been a way to give him cover to get through passing this bill, and then they can just revisit it. So that would be a good one for maybe us to research in the next hour and see if I am spreading false information. Which
there are 2 points on the act. One point, it was that the passing of the pipeline, and the other point, it is sort of watering down the permits for the further exploration of fuel or fuel oil. Now, what the leaders of climate change in different areas that I have here, because all the environmental groups have raised their hands, come on, this is great, but, yes, this is great, but it has been. for the permitting process, they have to sort of to regulate that on something that is called a sidecar regulation, which is they have to regulate this. And so what it looks like, it is that there is going to be room for us to lobby for not slowing down and reducing the regulations and the permitting regulations. So there is sort of a space to fight for that going forward, because this is not a done deal that is already regulated, that we are going to distill down the permits. You know, that is one thing. The other thing with the pipeline, you know, what I hear it is that we just have to raise our hands and say no to the pipeline and not permit it. And so to create that movement, so let's enjoy what we have. It is great. What we have is excellent. Now, the percentage of damage, as I have here from highly reputable, you know, there's the Al Gores of this world and others, yes, is that the damage, the relative damage caused by these actions compared to the great benefit of the act, it is minimum. And that we sort of can somewhat being reactive and maintaining the movement alive and the pressure, you know, stomach that. Another thing it is that having passed this act, it is not the end of the climate change and the environmental movement, because EPA is still is there and still the strengthening of the laws and reduce toxicity and, you know, the plastics and all these kind of things, you know, they are there and we have room to move forward. So whereas at the beginning I felt like, you know, I had my hands tied and said, this is terrible. What it's looking like, it is not. You know, let's enjoy the moment and let's organize and let's go fighting for this kind of thing, because they are not sealed and cast in stone as, you know, the money that has been assigned and, you know, the 10 of 12 elements that are in place in the act. So
Yeah. So, okay. So I hear people, and we've lost a couple of people, unfortunately. I hope it's not over this controversy and that they really were just busy, because I want to just say with Twitter, you can say what you think. So for instance, you could say, in my case, thank you, Representative Wexton, for passing this, because I understand there's really great climate solutions, but I'm concerned about what I'm hearing about the pipeline. So, you know, no, I'm really concerned about that, or something like that. You know what I mean? You have to fit it into a tweet. You can also do a Twitter thread. I forgot to talk about that if you want to go into more. But we can, it's your opinion that matters. And one of the things, even if you don't know, it's I'm hearing stuff about the Mountain Pipeline. What is your position on that? Or something you can say like that. Like you don't have to be the expert. Does that make sense? So I personally think it's worthy to thank our elected officials right now, like especially Abigail Spanberger and Elaine Luria, who are two of the people. And by the way, I put in links because they're two of the ones that are in the most conservative districts. And, you know, I put in links to what they say about themselves on their website, because you can just see how they approach climate. Like Elaine Luria, it's all about national security and kind of the Navy and stuff like that. It's a very, and for Abigail Spanberger, it's all about agriculture and conservation. And they're in tough districts. So it'd be good for them to get some love and feel good about the vote that they took. And it would be good for you to thank your own representative, whoever it is. So what I was going to suggest is, like, for me, because I often will tag multiple electeds, even if they don't represent me, I'm going to tag Jennifer Wexton, who's my rep, Abigail Spanberger, and Elaine Luria, and thank them for passing this. And then it sounds to me like quite a few people want to add something about, like, I'm concerned about the pipeline. And Rick put an email in about, or a chat in that Cardinal News. Do you have the link to that article, that it's not a done deal with pipeline? Right.
Yeah.
which backs up that I didn't totally give false information on that. Yeah, it's somehow like a future thing, so we can fight more about it later, but it was a way to get through. And the bottom line, it's a compromise bill. It's not a perfect, for sure. So would people be willing to do a thank you? Or just any email? I mean, not email, Twitter, tweet.
So I just did a tweet with that good science source you recommended and thanked my people, and I've already got a like.
Yay. Can you put a link to it in the,
Sure.
and then Denise, who are your people? Who are your reps?
Abigail Spanberger.
Oh, great.
And then I
Perfect.
put Tim and the other one and the president.
Would you be willing to send one to Elaine Loria?
I was just copying all of these the handles that somebody posted. I don't see Elaine in there.
Oh, Megan put her in at the, maybe scroll down and you'll see her. Yeah.
Okay, I see it now. Yeah.
And then the other thing, can you all put your Twitter handles in the chat so that we can go like and retweet your stuff? And can somebody put a link to the tweet? Megan, maybe you could do this, the link to the tweet from the Rhodium group, so people have that easily at their fingertips.
Just posted the link to it. I mean,
I have 2 followers.
What? You're not a bot. Yes, we all need to follow the new people. You should tell us if you're a new person so we can all go follow you. And then it's nice, like maybe we could actually make a list out of this group of people and we could just kind of be supportive of each other as we go along on our Twitter journey and like each other's stuff.
I went to something like this that the Virginia Conservation Network did a couple of years ago. I think it was part of their lobby day. And my friend and I got really excited and we made a spreadsheet of contact information. Now, of course, elected officials have changed, but probably a lot of it, and newspapers and things, probably a lot of it is still relevant. I'll dig that up and send it to you.
That would be awesome. And maybe Megan, maybe that's something you could help me with. Megan is our community organizer. If people are wondering why I keep asking Megan to do stuff, like maybe we could make a list out of this group and yeah. So I'm going to put my tweet that I just tweeted out and maybe you guys can like my tweet and I'll like your tweet. And by the way, I'm trying in our grant, we partially, they wanted us to kind of amplify climate work and those kind of harder parts of Virginia, because honestly, well, Wexton isn't a hard part of Virginia too. So, but like say, you know, in politics, there's just some people who just are in very, very safe places for certain issues. Like Jerry Connolly is going to be, you know, he can do anything he wants on climate and everybody will be happy. Sometimes in these other places, we just need to amplify. Oh, and by the way, speaking to that, I included in the document I sent you the Yale opinion maps. That's fascinating to look at because I find I'll go to places that I think are really maybe wouldn't be pro climate solutions. And I look at the maps, I'm like, wow, people are really, really into clean energy here, or, you know, really are really concerned about climate change. And that's often a way, like I did this with, for sure, with Mansion. I forget what it was. It was like 49% of West Virginians are worried sick about climate change. I was like, that's a pretty large number that he should be paying attention
Really?
to. She probably heard from a lot of them. You know, I think it helps because there's often misperceptions of how much public support there is for different things. So it's just another powerful thing to retweet. So who else? Let's see. Did anybody else share their tweet in the chat?
Not having.
Nobody has liked my tweet yet.
Wait.
What are you talking about? Or maybe you blinked or something. You should check it again.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Then what I thought we could do, and maybe not tweet like in the next hour, but maybe tomorrow, is a photo petition. Like, what would you like to maybe, and by the way, for photo petitions, it works really well if like you have a little kid, or maybe he would draw a drawing or something, to just basically do what I showed you, you know, like this beautiful piece. And actually I could use this for this one.
Is that a pizza box?
It was a IKEA box.
Okay.
Something, oh, I know what it was, like this wreath thing I bought. It was a decoration. And it works perfect for like, because I can, it's got literally built-in handles, so I can, it's in a pizza box. A pizza box would work, but it probably have grease. But anyway, this is going to work well for in-person rallies. But anyway, just take a selfie of yourself and then tweet that at the elected official. And it just catches people's eye in a way that maybe the Rhodium group will too, because that's a really good chart. But obviously it's a much more personal, like James, I think it'd be really great, especially if you did it. Yes, perfect. Perfect, Leanne. And especially, so it sounds like Denise and Leanne, you're in Abigail Spanberger's district. That's good. I don't think we have anybody from Loria's district, because it's always best to have constituents, but especially on social media, people often don't go check. Is Leanne, you know, in Abigail Spanberger's district? I think they don't even know where you live, right? So
Yes.
it's kind of just creating a story out in social media. That's how I kind of think of it, and why I don't worry too much about that. That I'm tweeting as someone who isn't my rep. So, by the way, I happen to tweet a lot at Mitt Romney and Representative John Curtis, because they seem like kind of, well, John Curtis in particular has talked a lot about climate change, and they're both in Utah. And Mitt Romney's really come around on climate, but they keep not doing the right thing. So I'm like, so I tweeted those two a lot. So, you know, or maybe like you have a beach house on the coast of Georgia and you could tweet at Buddy Carter. There's lots of reasons to tweet at different elected officials who aren't your people.
Who was the Curtis person?
The first person was John Curtis.
John Curtis.
Yeah, and let me put their names, because it's not a bad idea to follow these guys, because they are on what's called committees of jurisdiction. So they are on the energy. My God, I'm forgetting my federal committees. It's the House Energy and something committee. It's the Pallone committee. Representative Pallone is the chair, and so they vet a lot of the legislation that goes through. So John Curtis, and then Buddy Carter is the other guy, the other Republican on that. And they basically think about climate change. So they're at least in that space. They're not doing the right thing yet, but I'm hopeful that we will have bipartisan solutions, you know, at some point, because things are getting rough. The other thing in Utah, the Great Salt Lake is drying up really dramatically, and it's causing like toxic dust Like, it's really scary stuff that's going on out there. So I think that's the other thing, targeting elected officials, no matter what their party, in places that are really getting hammered. So like, for instance, when the Kentucky flooding happened, I tweeted at Rand Paul and McConnell. You know, it's like, this is going to happen more and more, according to the climate scientists. Like, come on. Because eventually, I think all elected officials will be working on this on the right side, because things are just going to get so tough. That's my theory. I just want to get them there faster, and we can do that by tweeting at them. And again, I want to say, you might not think you're having an impact by doing it, but you really are. You really, really are. And by the way, James, like for you, especially because you're young, you know, it's important for them to hear from the youth. You're inheriting the world that we are giving to you.
Definitely.
So like, because you could be a 58-year-old man, right? But if they see your youth, I think that really matters. And maybe you get, you know, some of your friends to do it with you.
Yeah.
And again, I just really want to say, you know, the Virginia delegation in general needs to hear from us. So I would tweet at is it Ron Whitman or Rob Whitman? Can't remember.
Rob.
Rob Whitman. And then there's a fellow out in the Shenandoah Valley. I would think the guy down in Southwest Virginia, because they had terrible flooding, you know, and we could be like, I'm praying that you'll have a change of heart on this issue. Or, you know, we don't have to be jerks. We could be like, come on and do some work with us.
Andrea, sorry, before you go any further, you know, you are sort of dropping all of these names. We sort of know some of us don't know them all, yes? And I think that you sort of have identified that group of people that need to be targeted on, you know, pushing them to the awareness. So I wonder whether we could create a list. So when we go into this kind of thing, you know, it's very easy. You know, sometimes you wake up inspired and you tweet like a maniac. Yes, more times you don't. Yes, sort of having some of these names when something comes, that will help us, you know, tremendously to be able to have like sort of the list, something like that. And also talking about, you know, how we have to pressure these people or not going forward. But I think that it's going to become incredibly relevant going forward. Having passing this law, which is absolutely great and it's absolutely fantastic, the success of this, it is going to be on the implementation. The success of this, it is going to be on how the local governments are set to be able to do this kind of things. Yes, you know, how prepared they are, how quick they are to, you know, to roll the programs and the initiatives. So I think that we're pushing them and being on top of, you know, the money's coming, did you do this, you know, whatever it is, you know, the different fronts. I think that it is going to be incredibly, incredibly important. And I do think that we are going to be probably busier than we were before, because before it was you sent, you know, the pressure to the congressmen, to the representative, or to the senators. That was like 3 or 4 or 10 or 15 people. Now it is going to be all the departments, all the organizations in absolutely all areas. So I think that we are going to be very busy, because the only way that this function is the implementation. Yes.
Yeah. So Joe, I totally agree with that. And maybe Megan, one of the things we could work on as a digital organizer is just making a list of all the Twitter handles and the different places that we have, and at least in this group of people. I do want to say I want to concentrate on Abigail Spamberger and Luria in this training, just because they did just do this really good thing and they are in tougher districts. And I think it would be good for them to hear that we're grateful that they did what they did. But yes, I agree with you, Joe. Over the long term, we're going to have to really tweet at all the local elected officials, the school board members, the board of supervisors, the city councils, the state people, because you're right. I mean, this is going to be a long haul implementing all of this, and they've got to we just had a meeting with the director of transportation in Fairfax about the money for buses and things like that. So there's a
Mm.
lot of work to do. Okay, so but for this one, so if you all could do a photo petition, and if you can tag your elected official and then tag Elaine Loria and Abigail Spanberger, that would be really super awesome. And then we could write letters to the editor about this. Obviously, that's a pretty good hook that just happened. And there's articles all over the place about this, including in local papers. I noticed it was in the Loudoun Times Mirror as an example. So really good hook for writing a letter. And then making phone calls. This is another thing people don't think to do, but just look up the number of your representative and just make a phone call whenever they do something. Especially thank you is just so important for elected officials. I'm a former elected and nobody ever said thank you to me. It's really almost like a miracle when someone says thank you. That's what it feels like. And then I would also like to set up meetings. And it could be about what Joe was just talking about, like getting their advice on what can we do to help make sure that this money actually gets deployed in the best way back at home. I think that would be a very powerful set of meetings to have. And I'm thinking Denise and Leanne, you're both in Abigail Spanberger's district, right?
Mhm.
So what if we set that up and then invited some other people along?